Yo, what up, what up, what up, and welcome back to Pnoid News. Man, listen, so What If Altus has dropped a manifesto for the new right. I wanted to stand here and do this video because I heard this last night, and I think he is assuming a second order effect is a baseline, right, for how human beings operate. And also, I think that he doesn't understand that he is a left wing person, right? He is 100% a left winger. He is running and looking at the world. He's running this program in his brain, looking at the world based off of elite theory and his ideology of the Anglo-Saxon merchant class driving society forward. He isn't really understanding exactly the purposes of a lot of things. So we're gonna break down this video. We're gonna get into his woo-woo stuff without further ado. And by the way, I don't want to like drag his stuff into the dirt. I want this to be like a conversation. All right, like I'm not gonna be like he's retarded. We're not gonna do that. All right, we're gonna actually stand here and like put forward proper arguments and break this down the way it's supposed to be broken down. I'll tell you what, man, let's get into this.
This is a project I've had for 2.5 years, and I didn't really know what to do with it for the longest time. Ever since I was a child, I've had an idea that our society doesn't really believe in anything. Our culture feels empty. As an Orthodox theologian once said, modern society is divided between a majority who try to numb itself to its meaninglessness, and the few who realize it and then go insane. As a teenager, I realized adults really had no idea what they were doing. Our entire society's worldview was a cardboard box meant to blot out the insanity of the actual world, and now we're in a rainstorm that's melting away the cardboard, but most people prefer to hide inside the box even though they're still getting wet, since they lack the courage to go outside and do anything else.
All right, so let's break this down because like this is some really basic stuff, right? Let's talk about culture, right? And where culture comes from, because it's a very important thing to understand as a fundamental principle. Culture comes from geography, right? It does not come from religion. Religion is not part of your culture. Religion's actually a second order effect, and I'll break that down here in a minute. Religion comes from, the land, right, as a whole, right? So like, when you live somewhere, right, you live on a mountain, you live, on a coastline, you live near a major river, you live near on a plain, right? All of these people will have different cultures because they have different needs for what they do every day, right? And your culture is nothing more than like what you eat, how you conduct yourself for business. It's like what you do all day, okay? And that's the basics of what culture is. And in culture being like this very, very basic thing, because it's shared by your in-group, your people, like how you survive, how you interact with one another, right? The language you speak, right? The way you hold yourself, the way you conduct your business, right? Because like you all have to have that, right? In order to be able to continue to move forward. It's a very... Man, listen, stop meowing at me, man. Listen, my cat's over here. Like, I don't know, man. She's going to get fixed next week. So, what, baby? You have to understand that this is where culture actually comes from. Now, in the West, we have what's known as an anti-culture. The reason we have an anti-culture is because of the fact that we live on a continent that is basically an empire. Like America, like he's broken this down. Like America probably should be like 9 nations. You know what I mean? I didn't get this idea from him, but like literally, like, he spouted it after. You know what I mean? Like I came to the same conclusion doing a bunch of reading. You can look up things like Albion seeds to understand some of these type of things. Now, this idea of having like an empire over all these nations of people who should all be really dissimilar in any real natural like way of living, right? Where everybody forms their own cultures, their own nations, their own languages, their own dialects, right? It would end up breaking apart, like a state, okay? Now, all of us also come from and well, like this country itself, you know, what I mean, comes from Anglo-Saxon England, right? Who was kind of always worried about the outside. They're an island right off the coast of Europe, and Europe was a place that was dominated by the Romans, the French, the Germans, the Russians, the Spanish, right? And like all these people, and there was always a constant state of like, oh my God, people are going to come and conquer us. And that really got carried over into America. And so with that, they ended up standing here in America, like trying to destroy culture long term, like throughout the years to where we are today. We have this anti-culture. Now, the thing about human beings is that this is where they derive their sense of worth, their sense of proper mentality, their sense of purpose, right, is from, number one, the men being able to carry on and be responsible for that culture, that nation, that community, that family, that structure, right? That's where common human beings get this. Is like, you are part of this. You carry this forward, right? And women, you know what I'm saying, are also, you know what I mean, responsible for the community and upholding the guidelines in that community against other women, right? This is where they derive their sense of culture, their sense of purpose in life. And this is where you get, you know what I mean, like today, because you see the function today of like Karen standing here, like complaining about everything, or the blue haired, you know what I mean, or pink haired feminist on Twitter screaming, oh, you know, like that's racist or whatever it is, right? Literally, these are all structures that have existed for, you know what I mean, 50,000 years. Okay. You hear my cat like being ridiculous? Legit, it's over here trying to climb in the window. I don't know, she messed herself up like somehow. I don't know what it is. Anyway, right. So all these things are fundamental things, right? They are long before religion. Okay, these existed pre-religion ideologies, right? Now, religion as a whole is something that comes along and ends up fortifying your culture, right? It ends up like consolidating it. It'll write it down. It'll like have these structures. And I'll give you a decent example of this. You'll have like, say, a harvest festival in your culture, right? Your harvest festival will exist no matter what happens, because, you know, like everybody is going to celebrate after like having some activity that you do, right? Something you worked at or something, or like you hunted something down and you brought it back, right? Now, these religions, whether it be the religion that you guys developed on your own or religion that came into being due to like like interacting with other people, whether it be war, trade, whatever the case is, this religion will end up codifying these celebrations. And you can see this with like Dias Muerte in Mexico, or the fact that like Christmas is celebrated at the, you know what I mean, in the time of the Beowulf, or at the festival of Beowulf or whatever it is, right? Or Easter with the bunnies and all this type of stuff. Like all these things are like pagan ideologies that like got folded into Christianity and swallowed up by it, right? These mentalities are things that you have to understand when it comes to understanding the fundamental purposes of human beings and what we need to be able to survive, right? But we're going to keep rocking on this video, bro. Listen, we're 46 seconds in, and I'm already putting down my thesis. Let's rock out.
We are a society of people who go through the motions without ever thinking why. We hate those who question this, since we don't have a good answer. This is also why our society is suicidally depressed. If you watch my channel, you'll see me talk about all the issues we have as a culture. As a person on the digital right who is part of the discourse and developments happening in real time, I can see that we live in a historic moment now. The right is forming a new ideology today, and I see that I'm like one of 5 people who could steer this process to be something better. I made this manifesto in this video since I wanted to release my ideas on both how to deal with these issues and also give my best ideas for principles that the right, or whatever new ideological coalition in a group I call the Not Left, is going to do. My goal here is to make a message men are willing to die for as the world gets darker. Whether or not I succeed is yet to be seen. It's become clear with recent news that the current in-group is deeply affecting AI for the worse. In contrast, the Boltzmann network emerges a beacon of innovation in decentralized AI by using crypto and blockchain to transform data security, transparency, and scalability. Overcoming the limitations of centralized AI, where privacy and capacity constraints prevail, Boltzmann offers a groundbreaking alternative. Its decentralized web of computing power ensures unlimited scalability, robust data protection, and Part 1. God is Evolution. God is evolution. That is the underlying principle.
Yo, can I shout out my boy General real quick, bro? Nature God, son. Nature God.
Which drives this thesis. I'm going to start with the simplified version and then go backwards to explain it. For principle, this is an ideology which I would like both atheists and the religious to be able to understand in frameworks that are palatable to them. My perspective is that I'd like to build all this up from easily recognizable assumptions that normal people could agree on. I know the word God triggers a lot of people due to connotations with previous religions. Instead, I'm just going to use the word Providence to signify what I mean by God. There is clearly an order to the universe. There are natural laws that operate across the universe and existence. Things like gravity, Darwinistic competition, duality, the mixing of the sexes, or entropy. We take these underlying rules of the universe for granted in our society, yet we don't think about why they exist or not. The universe is a game in which there are clear, immutable rules, yet we ignore them. People are rewarded for following those rules or not. Religion has been an attempt to quantify those rules in simpler ways that can be transmitted to people. We can agree that principles like hard work, humility, bravery, intellectual honesty, or love.
You know what this is like, man? Listen, you know what it's like dealing with like the religious people, right? Like everybody, when you're dealing with these new right individuals, right, and you run into these people who are either Orthodox Christians or, you know what I mean, like they're trying to like find Catholicism, or they're running back to like heavy duty like old school Protestantism or Baptist or whatever it is, right? You know what it's like, man? There are people who argue about the rules in basketball without fucking practicing how to shoot, right? This is the fundamental thing, right? Like they're not figuring out their own game, right? They're not standing here like working on their handle or their passing game or trying to figure out, you know what I mean, how to be a better point guard. They're literally arguing about the fucking rules. And they're like, if we just study the game enough, we'll make it good enough. Not, Brett. I can't. You have to learn how to fucking shoot. Listen, you got to learn how to like run. You got to be in decent shape. This is the fucking problem with you people. Like legit, it's so annoying, right? Because like you're missing your culture and you're running to religion to try to replace culture. And culture is a second order effect thing, right? It's not, this is not fundamental to human beings. Religion is not what you need. You don't need religion, right? This is not what it is, right? This is not the basics. The basics is being a human in a fucking low variance community that like literally you want to invest in, right? It's like literally going like, hey, look, you know, I want to buy a house, right? Like, oh man, listen, that sounds awesome. But yeah, listen, I'm not sure if I can afford said house. That is what this is like, right? And they're like, well, listen, you know what I mean? Like, don't worry about whether or not you can afford the house. What we need to figure out is what that house is going to look like. No. No, like you need to figure out a way to make sure that we can all afford the house. This is the problem, right? Long term. This is the issue. You're missing durability, right? You're missing the long-term part of this. Like all of you are trying to buy a house. You're trying to design a house you want to buy, right? But you're not figuring out whether or not you have the money to buy the fucking house, right? You need to be able to afford that 30 years worth of mortgage. Can you figure out a way to make sure that you can pay that bill every month? for 30 years. Right? You want to set up a society. This is why, like, and he's going to get into this where, like, he talks about, like, you know what I mean, like societies who end up becoming stagnant. You know what stagnancy is? Like, really, it's durability. India has existed for 6,000 years, right? China has existed for 5,000 years. Persia has existed for 4,000 years. That's not a failure. They're not failures. Persia's Iran, by the way, right? That's not a failure. That's a properly formed thing. This is important to understand, right? Let's keep going.
Are good. Furthermore, the natural order rewards them. The societies which follow those principles succeed and continue to propagate, and those who do not collapse. This is the history-long process of the rise and fall of empires, or decadence. The exact form these principles take change between different societies, and that's fine. Different religions exist in different contexts, as they need an individual message tailored to that people. This is similar to how people will have different internal decorations inside their homes, which serve the same purpose of beautifying the home, but are also individually good for that person. We assume something must be uniform to be true, but in the same way, different...
Like, listen, I'll be honest with you, okay? The Indian religions, bro, which I don't even know what, like, Hinduism, right, as a whole, okay, is fundamentally different than Christianity. Right, just fundamentally, it is an entirely different, like, fucking set of principles than Christianity is, right? There's nothing in, like, Hinduism about, like, work hard, right? It's not an Anglo-Saxon, like, fucking religion. It is not Anglicanism. It's not Protestantism, right? Like Christianity is fundamentally different than Christianity, right? From like 300 years ago. Like this is, you don't understand like any of the, like, bruh, okay? Religion is not your answer, okay? Religion is not the answer to this. If you're coming up with religion as an answer, you're asking the wrong question. Let's keep going.
Societies have different kinds of government tailored to their society. It's also true for religion. The Jews were obsessed with ritual taboos since they needed a strong vetting process to get around the constant external threats their society had. The Aztecs and many other ancient peoples did human sacrifice since it created a psychological process to symbolize the sacrifice their societies would have to make to survive. Different cultures play different roles for the conditions they evolved under. The thing is that all of these organisms, and societies are fundamentally organisms, are pitted in permanent Darwinistic competition with the other. Their role is to figure out what rules to follow, and if they do so correctly, they will succeed and propagate. The West Europeans figured out the scientific method, which happened to relate to objective reality very well, which then let them conquer the world. The Mesopotamians discovered agriculture, which again changed world history. We are born knowing nothing or very little, and different societies act out certain principles to see if it works. Those who follow the correct principles best outcompete those who don't. What this effectively means is that every generation is a challenge by Providence against everyone else playing the game. The thing is that the game is constantly changing, and so it's absurdly difficult to figure out how to win this time. The chariot is what got the Indo-Aryans to conquer the known world.
Again, this is Anglo-Saxon mentality, right? It is, if we figure out how to do this best, we win. That's not how this works, son. That is literally just not how this works in any way. You're not trying to figure out how to do this best, right? What you want to figure out is how to do this best for your humans, right? And we were like, these empires go in stages, right? And he brings this up here in a little bit where, like, you know, he talks about, you know, how history has cycles, right? But history doesn't have cycles. Civilizations have cycles, okay? And civilizations go through cycles where, you know, you go from colonization to empire to balkanization to nations to stability, right? And that empire stage tends to last for a very short period of time versus the period of time afterwards. Anybody who's ever had an empire, right, tends to still exist afterwards, right? That tends to be how that works. Like, you'll have an empire, the empire collapses, and then, it'll form into some coordination state of what it was, right? Like the Turks are the Ottoman Empire, the Iranians are the Persian Empire, the Chinese are, of course, the Chinese Empire, the Japanese Empire, right? The British are the British Empire, right? Like these are things that end up happening, right, long term. And in America, got settled, right, over the past, 250, 300 years. And now America's, done with its empire stage, and it's going to go into its balkanization stage, and it's going to have a core, a core section of America that will end up being the old empire, right? Like the core fundamental part of it, but it'll end up becoming much more durable long term, right? Because things go from, massively expansionary to unstable to, solidly durable, where it'll just last long term. Do you hear this cat out here just singing for no reason? It is ridiculous. I apologize for the noise in the background, but this is how this operates, right? And we are in this stage right now where we're going through the collapse stage, and there's nothing wrong with the collapse stage, right? And usually, and I'll be honest with you, every empire collapsed for the same reasons, because of urbanization, right? Because urbanization is unstable as shit, right? Trying to have this highly expansionary growth where you have all these ideas and technologies being developed, and but the thing is all of this is anti-child, right? And children are what makes your society stable, right? Having families is what makes your society stable, because you're investing in it long term. And when you stop doing that, what you're finding is that the entirety of your society is so unstable that people are going, I'm not 100% sure if I can raise these fucking kids for 18 years. That's just how this operates. Let's keep going though.
But their descendants, after conquering that land, needed to learn statecraft to keep their societies going. The phalanx did very well for the ancient Greeks until their enemies learned to combine.
Greece is another one, by the way. Just, putting that out there.
Cavalry with archers, which should counteract it. In a million ways, each era tries out a hypothesis, pushes it to its natural limitations to see how it works, and then tries something else, and if it fails, it dies. When Plato talked about the natural archetypes, this is the sort of thing he was describing. There is an abstract moral.
Oh, by the way, Egypt hasn't had an empire in 2,000 years. Still exists. Egypt's still there. Rome's empire fell in 500 AD. 1,500 years later, guess who's still there? Rome. Legit. And it isn't because of the religion. It has nothing to do with the religion, because you know why? Most of these places do not have the original religion that they had back then. Right? If you look at the Egyptians, they're not Muslims, right? They're not worshiping this, the sun god and, Ra and all that shit. They're not doing any of these things anymore, right? These are some fundamental. Rome, same thing. At Rome during its heyday, legit was, they were pagan. They had a polytheistic, the pantheon, right? Again, don't exist anymore. Greece, same thing, don't exist anymore. They're Greek Orthodox Catholics at this point. These are things that people don't. Again, religion is a second order effect.
Concept of greatness, and the closer a society acts to the standard of greatness, the more it succeeds. There is the duality of the masculine and the feminine, and when we look for romantic partners, we look for the ideal of our opposition rather than any real man or woman, and we see how real men or women fit up to this ideal. For some reason, water with heat or cold will change from liquid to air or solid. These abstract principles exist in a non-material material form as effectively ideas, and all material forms must conform to these abstract principles. We completely ignore this and take it for granted, but how can you have a totally materialist worldview and acknowledge these ideals control reality? Like a board game, there are pieces on the board, but those pieces must follow the rules of the game in order for the system to work, but you can't see those rules as material things, yet they control the game. Another factor here is that ideas take on their own life. For example, look at communism. Karl Marx invented communism as an idea. At that point, it became a living thing. In Marx's head, it was a fantasy, but then as it took over nations, the logical contradictions built into communism affected entire civilizations. You could see an idea take on a life of itself, infecting and driving the minds of millions. It struggled as an idea for its own survival. This is why most societies over human history believed in the spirit world. The ancient Greeks would explain this through saying a god or demon possessed the minds of millions, making Stalin or Mao happen. From psychology, we find that people have different sub-personalities which struggle for control of them. Religion is an attempt to instill good spirits or mindsets inside of yourself. This relates to the idea Carl Jung had of the collective subconscious. If you don't like the idea of spirits or demons, just view these as psychological forces. The universe is incredibly mutable. It keeps changing at all times in an infinite amount of ways. It's a constantly twirling hurricane. It's impossible to stop and see everything that's going on. This makes it intensely beautiful and profound. It always offers you more and keeps on challenging you, like the most beautiful and incredible work of art. It keeps on surprising you. Once you think you've cracked it, it throws something else at you.
Okay, look, all right. This is a lot of woo-woo nonsense, right? In the end of the day, I don't mean to like shit on his hard work, but it is some woo-woo nonsense. Truth. Let's talk about truth. All right, we're human animals. Okay. As animals, what we're supposed to do, right, as a whole, is like deal with nature, and we've completely conquered nature. And we come up with like new effects that, like are caused by us like trying to divorce ourselves from nature. And by nature, I just mean like the outside world. Okay. And this is all kind of relative in the end of the day, whether or not, right, you are, like challenge is kind of like a thing. Like they interviewed this African hunter one time, right? And they asked him, they said, when are you happy? He said, when I have meat. They said, when are you happiest? Right? Because they were expecting him to like say something crazy or something bananas. He said, when I have meat and honey. Right? This is his whole purpose in life. And it's a struggle to make sure that he has meat and honey. Right? Whereas us, we just go to the grocery store to get it. So we have to, like, all the rest of our lives are built off of these other struggles that we deal with every day to get these pieces of paper to go buy meat and honey, right? Or dealing with the relationships without having, the fundamental core principle of us, like, needing each other as human beings to be able to just survive as a whole, right? I always say that like the downfall of Western civilization was the invention of the washer and dryer, right? And this is an actual like really true core principle. When you industrialize the female's purpose, what you did is you destroyed relationships between men and women on a core level. These are these first order effect things, right? These are very core principles of stuff, right? You do things because like you need to do them. Right? You have things because you needed to have them. Indians don't eat cows, not because the cow is sacred. Like there's nothing actually sacred about the cow, right? But what the cow for them it was a horse. It pulled their put their goods to market, right? It gave them milk. It plowed their fields. It was worth more as a beast of burden than it was as meat and calories. That's why they don't eat cows. These are fundamental things, right? You do things because you need to do them. And this is where that whole religion thing comes in, right? That's a second order effect, right? they already had this principle of like, yeah, listen, that cow can be eaten, but it's worth more the other way. The religion came through and codified that. These are things that like guys like What If Altus don't understand, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, because he's an aristocrat, right? This is kind of the problem with him, right? Is like he is an aristocrat. He's not struggling, right? He's never struggled. He started his YouTube channel when he was like 16 or 17, right? He doesn't have like that inbuilt real actual struggle. And I got you, like he hiked the Appalachian Trail, and much respect to you for doing so, right? You know, like, listen, I live in the Appalachian Mountains. I'm that type of dude, right? And again, I'm from PA too, buddy. You know what I mean? Me and you both. It's weird how we sound so different, ain't it? Culture, son. Culture's a thing, right? This is the fundamental core principle that you're missing, right? Culture's a bigger word than you think, right? Like they've bastardized it, but like they go, when our corporate culture, we have synergistic means. Nonsense, right? Real culture, right? Actual culture is a fundamental thing that human beings need. And we're missing that desperately. And religion ain't where it's at, dog. It's just not. You have to have isolation, time, and interaction with the real world. Let's keep going now.
The collapse of all the greatest empires were brought about by the very same factors that made them great. As Aristotle said, and as the genre of tragedy was trying to portray, one's greatest strength will be turned into weakness. The strong state in China or religion in India were those societies' greatest strengths, but also the factors that drove them to stagnation. All rise in turn and then go into decline in natural cycle. The universe is a living, breathing process which follows natural cycles, with infinite crashing together at the same moment, creating a beautiful, wonderful mess that is our reality. It's unbelievably incredible that we have the privilege of living with it. The universe is a feedback loop which responds to itself. It's not a sterile machine. You can argue whether or not life is conscious or alive, but it's definitely a responsive system. A disease which is too successful will burn itself out by killing everyone, like a great empire will be killed by its own success. Poverty can create grit which allows you to be successful, while wealth for too long brings moral degeneracy which leads back to poverty. A tsunami creates a crashing wave which knocks into the shore, displacing the pressure. The world simultaneously pushes towards duality and equilibrium, as we'll explain later in this video. Alan Watts said, "Imagine if you were God. The thing with an omnipotent God is that he can do anything. The problem is that if you can do anything, you really can do nothing. Thus, the only thing God could do to avoid boredom is to do everything, since only by doing everything would he not be bored. The answer for why reality exists, and this works for even atheists, is why wouldn't it? Why not? Why not have a brilliant world that's infinitely large and interesting? A decade ago, the modern world felt boring, but now it feels a bit too exciting. Our lives are to struggle. If that were to be the case, what would the world look like? It would appear as if every single generation there was a new crisis. There would be an equilibrium that would constantly push us back towards struggle. Once you got a lot of food, people would breed until you hit scarcity. Once society gets too safe, it falls to degeneracy, so that people have to struggle again. Natural equilibrium pushes us towards struggle every generation. Over history, once people's lives aren't hard enough, they lose meaning. As you can see with decadence, or more abstractly, the Mouse Utopia experiment. This is why I say God is evolution, since for both they push us through struggle to improve. Every era is a challenge by God, or the natural order. Both assess us by objective measurements to see who wins, and then reward those who follow their codes. If you look over evolution, although there are dark ages, backsliding, cruelty, and more, you see evolution has guided us towards higher and more advanced levels. We're not amphibians living in salty tidal pools anymore, or Iron Age tribes living in villages less than 100 people. Providence makes sure that each generation is a struggle, but also that we advance through it. It can appear as if there's no progress, since life has to be pushed back towards survival.
All right, let me address this, right? Because like, okay, so God as evolution, right? Nature God, this is generals like fucking wheelhouse. I understand the principle because like General came up with this, you know what I mean? Like a year ago, right? I get the mentality, right? I do. You know what I mean? Like, oh, there's the yin and the yang. There's always like negatives with positives, all this type of stuff. For every action is the equal opposite reaction, all that type of shit, right? And this is, you know what I mean, like a fundamental principle of life. You know what I mean? You become too successful, you become too, you know what I mean, like comfortable, you end up with decadence. Decadence ends up causing you to like completely degenerate and you create your own fucking problems. I get all that, right? I do. Artificial difficulty is the answer to this, right? It's actually not to stand here and look at this in a principle of, you know, like advancement, right? Because advancement is fucking terrible most of the time, right? It's actually pretty awful for like human beings. What you want is you want people to stand here and have like the artificial difficulty of being able to like have to use their bodies and their minds on a regular basis to be able to feel fulfilled while they're living their lives, but you want them to be stable and live their fucking lives, right? And you really don't want this just for like you really only want this for like your lower and middle classes, right? The upper classes, you want to be able to allow them to be like completely degenerate. You probably need like a pillared society in the end of the day. What you kind of want to do, and we've actually designed a system for this, and I'm gonna work this out here soon. You need a pillared system where you have human beings who can, you know what I mean, like live in, you know, like sustainable like farming communities, and on the other side you need people in the cities to be able to like go and, you know, like have gay pride parades, and you need them not to touch. Right, you know what I'm saying, because you need the population from the rural areas and you need the human beings from the rural areas to be able to like, you know, go conduct warfare, but on the same level you want people to be able to create technology that, you know, I mean, will improve humanity, right? You kind of need both of these things, but you cannot have them like mixed together because it's just not healthy for either side, because it just creates this massive divide that ends up having people just be completely angry and fucking mad all the time, right? The answer is respect, right, for each other and their ways of doing things, you know what I mean? But like that's never going to happen because like each side's going to look at the other as being like antithetical to being, you know, fucking humans, right? Like on one side, like, we want our freedom, right? That's that liberal mentality, right? And then on the other side, you have, you know what I mean, the human mentality, which is, you know, we just want to live here and raise our crops, right? That's what you want, right? You know what I mean? Like, you know, and that's fucking human beings, right? They're like, you know, we just want to be okay and not have to worry about shit. And you have to have propaganda on both sides to make that shit work long term, because both of them have extreme downfalls and drawbacks. And the only way to make them both work at the same time is to have an out group that you fucking hate, right? So that you have something to work against, right? Because iron sharpens iron. Like, it's just how that operates. And you don't want to have perpetual, constant fucking war forever in your society, because like that is completely unhealthy and unnatural and unsustainable, right? That's just, you know, no, okay, no, that's fucking bad. You don't want warfare forever, right? That's dumb. And it doesn't, you know what I mean, like work, you know, and especially like when you end up becoming like us, where if we tried to conduct warfare against the rest of the world, we would literally enslave them, right? That's not healthy either. Right? That is not healthy, right? Like legit, because that's not healthy for human tapestry. It's not human for human genetics, right? Not healthy for genetics, right? Let me talk about this. They've actually done studies on genetics of human beings, right? There are chimps in Africa, right? In the same troop have more genetic diversity than all of the fucking human species, right? We need to be able to have more genetic diversity happen, right? And the only way you do this is to allow like genetics to actually form. Basic, right? On some basic shit, right? And you have to be able to have outside stimuli to force genetic adaptation. And we don't have that. right? Because all of us live inside of fucking houses, and life is like really easy for us. So we've divorced ourselves from like the outside stimuli, i.e., nature, that would like cause genetic variety and mutations. Crazy mentality. We are our own worst enemy. As it is. Let's keep going though.
Survival for the system to work, but the whole system keeps growing. History is a spiral or double helix, like DNA, in which, as I've said many times before, that the spiral turns in on itself and grows more complicated, but you can see the same patterns repeating again and again, although every era of history is still different and unique. The ancient mystery schools believed all of this was God's plan in reproducing himself. To think about it, as you look over evolution, the power of life grows, as does life's mental abilities or level of consciousness. Providence wants to guide us to higher, more godly levels of advancement to be more like him. This is the great chain of being, spoken about in pre-modern philosophy, as some life forms are more advanced, thus more like God, even though all of reality is a reflection of God somehow. There are a couple principles I'd like to work through before I continue. This manifesto is far shorter than I wanted it to be, so I've had to simplify things, but there are several things you must understand about the world or underlying rules, like the laws of physics, which explain things. The first being duality. All things to exist must create their opposite. As the first law of physics is, all things must have equivalent counter-reactions. Man must have women. Love must have hate. War, peace, day, night, good or evil. When we don't have the duality, something doesn't exist. Before day, there wasn't night, merely void. We took having breathable air for granted before we went into space. People ask why God would make a world with cruelty. The thing is that there must be an equal force to drag us down for good to fight against. The devil exists since there must be balance here. Keep in mind the universe is designed to be interesting and difficult. Good must fight evil to grow stronger. To explain this in non-religious terms, there is entropy. Entropy is the force of natural chaos. The example from physics is that when you break a ceramic plate, you can't put it back together. You couldn't put the Roman Empire back together after it fell, although Justinian tried. From the Big Bang has been a gradual breakdown from the original unity. Physicists believe that the world has been getting more chaotic since the dawn of time. We see this in that anything that isn't maintained, whether a nation, house, physical health, or a human relationship, will fall apart without effort. Everything collapses in entropy without effort against it. The irony is that the duality to entropy is that you've gradually seen incredible advance and growth in complexity over the universe's history occurring at the exact same time. Planets and suns have formed. Life, civilizations, art, or philosophy. Order and chaos both grow in power at the same time, playing into each other in the same process. As physics says, every reaction has an equal counter-reaction. This is good and evil, God and Satan. Satan is symbolic.
Okay, listen, bro. It's really important to understand. Okay, evil to you is good to another. All right, this is some like 101 shit, but like I guess I have to explain it because fucking humans. Evil and good, right, are kind of like, you know what I mean, like two sides of the same fucking coin. Every general throughout history and every king throughout history and every people throughout history said God is on our side, right? Like, to what one person would say is evil, another person would say is, you know what I mean, like positive for them. It's gain for them, right? It's not good and fucking evil, right? That's not a fucking thing, right? When you grow up, right, and you get past the bullshit, you realize that this isn't evil things, right? In the end of the day, like what you would see as evil, like for instance, you know, like fucking chipping a human being or putting a mark of the beast on somebody, to a state that's just like, hey, look, you know, we're being able to operate properly, right? And more, you know what I mean, like we're gaining power for ourselves. Like, that's not them people being evil. That's them going like, hey, look, we're managers. Our job is to manage shit. And the best way we can manage this is to, like, you know, be able to control things, right? So this is the side of, like, evil that, like, motherfuckers really don't look at, right? In the end of the day. Now, of course, you have like pedophiles and, fucking, serial killers and people who eat motherfuckers and shit, right? That's a different thing, right? Altogether, that's just fucking human beings being fucking terrible, right? And yes, that's fucking evil, 100%. But on on a very abstract, dumbass level, like that human being, you know what I'm saying, is enacting out things that he feels is good for him, right? So this is the fucking problem for, like humanity as a whole, is to try to get away from human beings who, goals don't line up with theirs or are antithetical to theirs. That's a fundamental thing. And this is why we form, governments and states, is to negotiate out, and compromise on things where human beings have two separate, like fucking wants and needs, right? And this isn't like really order versus in order. This is just, like human beings trying to figure shit the fuck out, right? And operate on fucking problems and equations that come up as, like when we argue about geography and infrastructure and, the distribution of fucking goods among human beings, right? Like this is, like, man, listen, bro, like this is some woo-woo stuff. Like legit, this is woo-woo.
Symbolically, that which pushes for entropy, and God, that which pushes for order and growth. This is a process integral to the universe itself.
God doesn't push for order and growth. Like legit. God pushes for stability, right? You know what I mean? Like legit stability, right? That doesn't mean growth. Stability literally is antithetical to growth, right? Like you cannot have growth and stability at the same time. You cannot have order and growth at the same time. That's not how that operates, all right? When you have order, things are stable, right? When you have things that are stable, they don't fucking grow, right? This is basic, okay? What you're looking at, right, is the difference between what you're looking at is trying to cope, right, as a human being with the need for like more wealth, right? This is the mentality, legit. And like, yo, man, listen, like, hold up, bro. Let me re-listen to that real quick. Hold up 1 second, bro. Like, let me hang on.
Satan is symbolically that which pushes for entropy, and God that which pushes for order and growth.
I mean, God is also like force of entropy, right? In the end of the day, like, he created the universe, and like, because entropy isn't destruction, right? This is very important to understand, like, because entropy is kind of like it's chaos, right? And during chaos, you're gonna land on, like, say you have like 5 options, right? One is, like destruction. 2 is destruction. 3 is destruction. 4 is coagulation, right? And 5 is destruction, right? One of them 5 times you're going to land on, like coagulation, which will end up forming a planet, right? It's not really entropy. Like it's not really chaos. It's just the chances of bad things happening are oftentimes higher than the chances of good things happening. That's literally what chaos is. Motherfuckers really fundamentally misunderstand like fucking entropy in the end of the day. And I just learned that last night. Thank you, General. Thank you. Appreciate it.
This is a process integral to the universe itself, which existed for billions of years before humans, but which human life fits inside the archetype. Alongside this, people can put out higher or lower frequencies. Communism is an ideology which propounded low frequencies as it created disorder and failed. Communist societies consumed all the social institutions of their previous societies, leading to chaos. Liberalism pushed order, albeit ironically indirectly.
I mean, let me put this way, okay? If communism rose today, right, it would be highly successful. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the technology exists to make, like farms be highly yielding, right? Like really productive. There we go. Highly productive, right? So therefore, like they could do like collectivized farming much better today than they could back then, right? And today, and this is the reason I bring this up, is because today basically we do communist fucking farming, right? Where literally like, we pay farmers to just, like as like employees of like the U.S. government, right? In the end of the day, The average farm in America makes negative $800 fucking dollars. I'm gonna say that again. The average farm in America makes negative $800 fucking dollars. I feel like what you're doing is you're having socialism, right, and communism on farms, right? Like all of them, like everything that they do and everything that they live on is all, you know what I mean, like fucking capital that's put in from the government, right? And like farming loans. There's some fundamental things that like I feel like we're not really addressing, right? You want capitalism, your food's going to go up a lot in price. We don't have capitalism. Keeping this all the way 100, right? We don't have capitalism. And by the way, all of the food stamp program is literally just a giant motherfucking farm subsidy. Let's keep rocking.
Resulting in more advancement. Individuals can do this as well. A good principal in a school will result in the students thriving and learning more, creating a compounding spiral to improve those students' lives in general who improve others, while an evil principal will have the opposite effect. We all choose whether we serve order or entropy. We can gradually build the outside world in our image, as for example, a society structures its architecture or political systems based off its subconscious. We are all constantly projecting our internal life to the outside world. We are all like radio towers who project ourselves across the universe. America as a country, or Billy Joel, have been very successful projectors in that they spread their essence around the world so that it changes others. As individuals, we're an accumulation of that alongside everything else that's projecting around us. Our world is created by these different ripples spreading outwards. All things want to propagate their ripple as much as possible. An easiest example of this is the sun, which propels energy around the universe.
This is a very liberal ideology. Right. Listen, liberalism is the ideology of the merchant class, right? It's a religion of the merchant class. And this idea of you going out and spreading your essence throughout the world, right? If you want to say like, multiply and be fruitful, with you, right? With your ideology, right? But no, that's not really what humans want to do. That's not fundamental to humanity. That is fundamental to you, Rutledge. All right, that's fundamental to you, Rudyard. Bro, listen, it's Rut something. I'll be honest with you, okay? It's fundamental to you. It's fundamental to me, okay? It's not fundamental to everybody. Everybody else just wants to, like live their fucking lives and get laid, right? Like me and you are way past the square of that, okay? These people are fucking not, right? The average human being just basically wants to fucking live and be left the fuck alone. I feel like, and these are the people who like are the right-wing human beings. They just want to be left the fuck alone and let them live their lives. This is why your manifesto is nonsense. You're building a manifesto for left-wing people, right? You are building a manifesto for formerly left-wing human beings, like human beings who, like 100 years ago would have been seen as like upper class leftists. Okay, you are building a fucking manifesto for aristocrats. 1,000,000%.
Universe, which in turn has allowed the creation of life, all built upon the sun's projections. All things exist within the great chain of being, from higher to lower forms. The higher forms are realer than the lower forms. They all exist together as all things are connected into a universal whole. There are cells in our body which exist to serve us, but these cells also have their own existence. We as humans are cells inside our nations or cultures. Those are in turn cells in Earth's biosphere, which is a cell to the solar system and then universe. If Earth died, it would cancel all the nations and humans, thus Earth is realer. We have to recognize our place inside of this. Depression and suicide comes from separation. From studies and just from the general historic wisdom, we've found that people feel happiest when they know they belong, when they have communities, when they have beauty around them, have a value system that tells them what their place is and where they belong. Most religions exist to remove the barrier between people and the universe, to feel at one with everything else.
No, it doesn't. No. This is a fundamental core misunderstanding of fucking religion, right? This is a fundamental core. Again, religion codifies your culture, right? Your culture is what gives you all those things that you just mentioned. Community, place of belonging, like rules, that's your fucking culture, son. That is not your religion. This is your fucking culture, dog. That's what this is. You need to understand that you are fundamentally wrong about your core thesis about this. All right. All this is just woo-woo bullshit, right? Literally. Okay. All your stuff, like all your opining, you know what I mean? Fucking soliloquy about this nonsense. Nonsense. Okay. It's just all just gobbledygook garbage. Right. You need to understand that this is not what you're looking for. 100%. Let's keep rocking though.
Once you realize you're part of a web of existence, you can stop worrying, since you know even if you die, you belong to something greater. In fact,
oh my God. All right. Nations, right? Nations. Your nationality, right? Your ethnicity. You're part of like, and this is where like your ancestors come in, okay? You have ancestors. You're part of a long line of human beings, right? You're not part of a web of humans all across the earth. That's fucking dumb. Okay. No, because like if you're part of like 8 billion, you're one of 8 billion human beings. You don't fucking matter. You're an ant in an ant colony, and we kill ants all the fucking time without even thinking about it. You just walk around and the ants die. Just how it operates. Okay. But if you have like ancestors, right, who did some shit, and you're part of something larger than yourself, right? Because you're part of a long line of humans who sacrificed to bring you here. This is called civilizational capital, right? You're part of a bunch of human beings who sacrificed themselves to get you here. It gives you purpose. It gives you meaning. It gives you value, right? And this is a core fundamental thing in culture, right? Like literally culture is developed from human beings continuing to live in the same area over and over again in the same fucking way, and you taking that culture and passing it to your fucking young, right? This is the whole purpose of fucking men and man. Like, yo, listen, bro, you're wrong about your entire core fundamental principle of this entire fucking video. What are you doing?
In fact, we're made up of particles from existence, with consciousness being an illusion of our separation from the rest of the universe. Part 2, the Consciousness Project. We don't have much control over the things that happen to us in our lives in a lot of cases. We do to a certain degree, but you could be born a slave. Your nation exists next to a much larger neighbor who can conquer you without you being able to possibly defeat them. If you're a peasant in Uganda, you're not going to become a venture capital mogul, and expecting you to do so is just insane. Furthermore, if someone is born in a position of immense privilege, like wealth or power, it's not right for us to judge them for something that came about from the chance of their birth. And even being born in those bizarre conditions, they should know what is right. This is something our society actually does struggle with, which shocks me since when I was younger, and I'm 22, so I'm still really young, we took completely for granted, which I thought was a stable assumption. That being said, our society has created an artificial racial caste system in which your moral level, hiring, or social advancement is determined from birth based off how oppressed your racial or sexual caste is.
Okay. All right, listen, bro. All right. You have to understand how economics works. All right. This is what all this is actually about, right? This has absolutely nothing to do with like our values or principles. Not in any well, let me address this. Capitalism is liberalism. All right. Liberalism is capitalism. It's the same fucking thing. Okay. And the idea of fucking capitalism is to be able to have as many human beings inside of the capitalistic system as possible, right? Which drives it forward at the least amount of cost to everyone, right? So what you want to do is you want to be able to have a labor pool that's able to be hired out of your entire population, right? And you don't want to leave anyone out. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to stand here and bring in blacks and trans and all these other people. And by the way, trans people are the absolute best corporate drones. That's what they are. Schools produce what our economy needs. They always have. When we needed, like coal miners and steel workers, they produced coal miners and steel workers, right? When we needed, like bureaucrats and whatnot, they produced those. And now when we need like corporate drones who are going to spend all their money on Funko Pops and, like medical stuff and going to college and taking out, massive amounts of credit to buy nonsense and not have any children, that's what it is that our school produces. right? Basic ass principle. Let's keep going.
I can't believe we did this, since I think, if polled, the vast majority of the Western world can agree that this isn't what any of us wanted, but a small group of radicals pushed it and gained dominance. This leads to the second point. The human mind tries to avoid two things at all costs, those being responsibility and powerlessness. Although this happens subconsciously and is very hard to avoid, our goal is to try to develop a system by which people stop stressing about that which they have no power over, while also taking responsibility for that which they can. If you look at the history of humanity as an attempt to abdicate responsibility or avoid powerlessness in a myriad of ways, you realize that there is a very dark side of our human condition, one that is preventable. That being said, this is why we judge.
Yo, listen, that's not why we avoid responsibility, okay? We avoid responsibility because responsibility costs money, all right? Like, when you take responsibility for things, you end up having to, like, you know what I mean, like, release amount of your profits. That's literally why, you know what I mean, at the end of the day. It has absolutely nothing to do with, like, you know what I mean, some kind of fundamental core principle about things. Everybody wants to have, like, responsibility, but the thing is like, when you have responsibility for things, right, like, yo, it goes bad when you're taking tons of risk. And due to the fact of, like, our society being based on, like, exponential growth, you have to have tons of risk in that exponential growth, in particular taking out, like, tons of amounts of loans for capital, right? You know what capital, right? Like, you know, I know capital, like, capitalism really means, like, you know, the normal people own the means of production, right? Which is, you know what I mean, like, you know, machines and all these type of things. But really, in the end of the day, when you're talking about capital, you're talking about money. Right, you're talking about, like, investment capital, right? This is a fundamental principle of this, right? So your capital, right, that you're borrowing to be able to move forward, right? Like, and when you're borrowing money constantly, what you're doing is you're leveraging, right? And then leverage creates risk, and in having risk, you want to be able to negate responsibility for what happens if that goes sideways. Okay, that's why, like, you declare bankruptcy as a company and nobody goes to jail. Nobody ends up being on the hook for anything. Like, it all just ends up, you know what I mean, like, just kind of dissipating in the middle of the air. Fundamental thing, all right? You know what I mean? But, like, it's shared. And by the way, the risk is shared among a whole bunch of people. This is, you know what I mean, this is why, like, you're trying to abdicate responsibility as much as possible inside of this society, because of the fact that our society is all based on leveraging, you know what I mean, like, future work and future growth for, you know what I mean, what we want today. That's why, like, you know, everybody's, like, up to their eyeballs in fucking loans.
People for their birth, not their actions. The thing is that you can perfectly correlate the wealth of a society with how much it values individual responsibility. When you look at the success of Western civilization, a big reason for it is that the West created the individual. In previous societies, you were part of a clan which dominated your whole life, determining your work, who you were married to, and take your money when you succeeded. What capitalism is the creation of a system by which someone was assessed for their personal level of productivity. The state in turn mooches off individual productivity, sublimating it to the group. Once you see the left as a move to abdicate responsibility, everything else makes sense. When you see how the left's goal is to be responsible for nothing by having the state take care of you for your entire life. If anyone succeeds, they're bad and should be torn down by society. You can never be judged for failing. This is the great evil of the left, in that it tears down the great out of envy. Our goal here is to make a society where people don't feel stressed for things.
That's literally not true, all right? Like, that's not the great evil of the left, right? Listen, yo, man, listen, that's not how this operates. Okay, so the left wing in society believes in managing, right? They believe in managing, like, society as a whole, right? They're institutionalist, the vast majority of left. And they don't believe in just tearing down people who are successful. That's not what that is, right? Their belief structure is that everybody should be able to have, like, the fundamental things, or the fundamental, not institutions, the fundamental ability to, like, do, like, to be able to, like, participate inside of the system, right? That's what the left wing like really believes in. And managing, right, the entirety of the system, right, where like you go, okay, if you're super duper successful, you know what I mean, you should, you know what I mean, like share a portion of your wealth to have to stand here and, you know what I mean, like build infrastructure, right? Or, you know what I mean, like you should put back in what you took out, because everybody who is successful as a whole, right, used the civilizational capital of our society to build their wealth. Right, I don't give a fuck who you are, right? Like if you believe in private property, what you're doing is you're relying on the government to enforce your private property, right? That's fundamental, right? And this is a civilizational capital, that civilizational principle that was built up over time, but the capital is enforced by us all like paying taxes and, you know what I mean, like, you know, believing in the rule of law and the government honoring the rule of law, right? These are things that like we probably should have like a much different and much better grasp of like what we're talking about. Let's keep going now.
Things which they can't control. They are trained from childhood to do this, to make it part of their automatic subconscious. There are multiple ways of doing this, but EMDR and cognitive behavioral therapy are both methods that can rewire the subconscious, and I think society should use these liberally alongside other psychological methods. My goal is to create a society where people are constantly improving their subconscious and developing them with groups. Perhaps using psychedelics like ayahuasca, the hemisync methods developed by the Monroe Institute, or anything else that works that can help get us in touch with our subconscious or the spirit world, whatever you want to call it, so that we can share our discoveries to learn more about ourselves and the world. To put a focus upon the human experience and what the subjective experience of life is as a person. The modern...
This, again, more woo-woo dumbass nonsense, right? In the end of the day. You hear this fucking cat? I swear to God. Fucking like, yo, again, it's more woo-woo nonsense in the end of the day. Like, yo, no. Like what our fundamental core principle is like you should want human beings to be willing to like invest in the future of our civilization, right? And in doing that, what you want is people to have fucking children, right? And having them, you know, want to have fucking children means that like it should be stable for them to have fucking children in, right? And what you want to have is a fucking culture for them to give to their children, right? This is not a very difficult thing, right? Your woo-woo, like, ridiculous nonsense, right? In the end of the day is fucking dumb, okay? Like, legit, this is fucking stupid, okay? This is, I don't know why you're saying these words out of your face hole right now. Let's keep going.
Our world feels very empty and cold. We live in a giant machine whose sole purpose is to extract human effort for greater productivity. What we stand for is a society which puts the human soul and spirit at the center. A society which prioritizes beauty, the soul, tradition, the divine, and the other deep, profound things that we're willing to die for. The construction of these factory mass-produced homes, or this...
Listen, there's nothing wrong with factory-produced homes, okay? Like, this is actually, like, probably the answer, right? The answer is using technology to, like, create, like, a better fucking society for human beings, right? I'll give you a really good, for instance. You know, having... like having neighborhoods where like you no longer grow grass. Like the problem with those homes is the grass. The problem isn't the homes themselves. Like you see in between all those homes, like where they have like all that like stuff in the middle, like green stuff. Yeah, that's dirt where like, you know, fucking like food can grow, right? That's actually the answer, is to have communities, right? Where like, you know, you grow fucking food, right? You know what I mean? And then like what you have is you have like a shared need and want and, you know what I mean, like desire and goal, right? Of you all raising your fucking children together, right? In doing so, right? You're working towards that goal and forming communities and cultures, right? This is a basic fundamental thing that you should be looking at, right? This is not terrible, right? What they should do though with these factors, they should be going down in price, not up, right? These are the problems that we have. Maybe we should have a conversation about whether, you know what I mean, like the capital class is more important than everyone else, or whether, you know what I mean, like human beings are what the fuck is important. Let's keep going though, you know what I mean?
Crappy modern art are both sins against the soul, which I will not abide by. The thing is that the development of the soul of our society is a shared process that I want us to all work on. So the final aim is something I myself might not understand. We also aim to put individual responsibility at the aim of society. Over history, the twin tyrannies of culture and government have torn the individual down. In most societies, the individual exists to serve.
You do realize that like the whole idea of the individual is a leftist principle. You do understand that's a very leftist ideology, right? You do get this, right? That this is leftist as fuck, right? This is all leftist. This is left wing liberalism, liberal ideologies, right? Not like just Democrat, but like literally liberal ideologies. You probably shouldn't be looking to like push the individual. You want families and fucking community. Bro, listen, yo, I swear to God, like I'm fucking. Listen, Rutledge, all right, bro, Rut something, or I don't know what the fuck your name is at the moment, okay, legit. No, okay, fucking bad boy, all right, stupid, stop, all right, this is fucking dumb, okay, legit. You don't want individuals, you want communities, all right? You know why? Because you want stability. You know why you want stability? Because that raises humans, all right? And having humans makes the world like fucking better, right? You know what I mean? Like, yo, because what you're doing is you're fighting for fucking humans, right? You're asking for like humanity, right? You want humanity. What you need is stable, fucking solid communities where people raise fucking families. This is not that difficult to understand, right? This is not hard. This is not some like crazy fucking thing, right? This is very simple. All right. This is I don't know why it is that like you think that like, you know, it's fucking whatever. This is fucking basic, right? Legit. This is what you want. This is what we all need, right? This is what the right wing should be arguing for. It's fucking families and communities, right? Families and communities is what you should be arguing for, right? You should not be arguing for like woo-woo ridiculous nonsense, right? Ooh, let's attach the right and left hemisphere of the brain and like UCIA. No. Okay, stop. Bruh, stop. Seriously. Woo-woo nonsense. What are you doing? Bruh, listen.
The propagation of the society. Irrational and stupid superstitions grow, while the forces of envy and ignorance tear down great.
Irrational, bruh, like, again, these are called cultures. Like, fucking cultural practices are all superstitious. What you're doing right now is superstitious. Okay? Literally, what you're arguing for is superstition, bro. Listen, like, you know what, bro? I'm done making this fucking video, all right? Because I gotta go take a shit. All right, listen, I'm Tom Pease with Pnoid Dudes. Y'all know the deal, man. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, you fucking, bro, go to like eminence.com and buy fucking soap. I'll put a link in the fucking description. Yo, make sure you get some fucking soap and shit. All right, you need some fucking soap and shit. Okay, get some soap and stuff. You know what I mean? That's soap stuff. All right, legit. You need some soap and stuff. All right, like 100%. This soap is the most amazing soap that you'll ever like use in your entire life. Right? It's really not that fucking expensive. You know what I mean? You'd be supporting like a local dude you'd be supporting the dude in the Ozarks who, you know what I mean, has like these things called a family, right? He actually, you know what I mean, decided to invest in the future and have like, you know, 4 kids, right? Which is amazing, right? And we should all applaud human beings who do these things, right? Legit. You know what I mean? Because, you know, like fucking, it's, you know what I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that we don't, you know what I mean, fucking like have, you know, fucking soap. You know what I mean? We don't listen, like, we don't stand here and, you know what I mean, like support each other, right? And support like, you know what I mean, our own communities and the things that happen around us, right? This is like the best soap in the entire world, right? It is like the best thing you could possibly have. Look, bro. Order some fucking soap. You can use this shit in your motherfucking hair. You can use this shit, you know what I mean, to like, you know, degrease your engine, right? Eminence, you know what I mean, soap. It's amazing, right? Like, I use it every day. It is like the best soap that I've ever had. Like, yo, look at my keyboard, bro. It's a keyboard, okay? Like, real shit. Yo, I'm Tom Pease with Pnoid News. Y'all know the deal. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm up out of here. Peace.